everybody. This is Jeffrey with PersuasionReadingList.com. We're recording a podcast today with Matt Rizvi. You might know Matt from Twitter at Daily Copywriter. Matt has been a full-time copywriter since 2013, selling millions of dollars of info products. He's written dozens of promotions, and he's studied under some great A-list copywriters. He's worked with high-profile authorities like financial analyst Porter Stansberry. He's worked with two-time New York Times best-selling author Pamela Yellen and 12-term Congressman Dr. Ron Paul. Matt lives in San Francisco with his wife, his dog, and you can find Matt on Daily Copywriter, like I said. You can also find him on his website, mattrizvi.com. Welcome, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us.
Jeffrey, my pleasure. I really appreciate you bringing me on to the podcast today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you are out in San Francisco. Is everything going nicely out there today?
It's a little cloudy. You know, San Francisco, it doesn't always have the most spectacular weather, but we are up on a hill, so it wasn't too rainy today. But it's always nice to go out on the park, get some writing done. Unfortunately, like I said today, a little overcast, so it could be a little bit better.
That's all right. When you go out to the park and you write, do you work on a notebook there? Or do you work writing pencil and paper, or how does that work?
Always on the laptop for me. I don't do a lot of handwriting. I know you mentioned you like to write with the physical pen and paper and all that, but for me, I'm just like trying to type away, get it all on paper as fast as I can, and I'm a little bit slow with the handwriting, so. I take notes on note cards a lot, and I have lots of handwritten note cards for things I really want to remember. But when I'm just trying to create emails or promos and things like that, I'm trying to speed write on my laptop, get as much stuff out as fast as I can.
Yeah, one of the premiums you offer on your website is how to increase your writing speed. I've seen it, and I've also seen a live demo of you pounding out an email with, under 14 minutes or something like that. You had a couple minutes to spare at the end of that 15-minute challenge. That's for sending an email to your list. Is that how quickly you write, or you find yourself writing for some of your more long-form and more in-depth type clients?
So I always want to be writing fast. There's not a time where I think it's advantageous to write slower. I tend to write a little bit faster with the emails just because it's a very defined project, right? I mean, with like an email, it's only going to be so many words. You know where you're going to begin, and for the most part, I know how it's going to end. Whereas when I'm writing a long form promo, if you're 30 pages plus, sections aren't always as clear cut. So there's a little more uncertainty, and you have to feel it out more. But I think it's easier when you're writing and you have a clear objective in your mind, what you're going to accomplish during the writing. And when you have that kind of vision for how it's going to, the flow and all the pieces you need. And if it's a shorter block, like I definitely try to chunk up my writing. So an email is a clear chunk of writing. And so I find that easier to just, get the writing flow out of my fingertips. Whereas a promo, if you don't chunk it, it can be very slow. And so when I do try to write long form promos to speed up my writing, I'll definitely create an outline or something like that and have very specific sections where I'm like, okay, this is the goal of this section. This is what I want to cover here. And I create a brief outline where I have my research and talking points, but that definitely speeds up the process anytime you're writing, just to be able to chunk it into little pieces. In an email, I think is like the perfect brief little chunk to write out really fast.
Sure. Do you have a specific architecture or organizational structure for these long form promos?
Yeah, so I think the architecture of Persuasion is pretty universal. Granted, I have a template as part of the course that I sell, but really my template changes and all the time depending on the project, depending on the format of it. Sometimes if it's like an interview format, if I'm writing a script and it's two guys sitting down, the way that I approach that would be slightly different. But from a big picture perspective, there is a general architecture where at the very beginning of any type of persuasive copy, you really want to just, first of all, grab someone's attention. Obviously in the headline and the lead. The lead is typically the first 2 or 3 pages of your package. And then once you've grabbed their attention, you typically I like to just summarize what we're going to be talking about and tease some of the benefits that they're going to learn about. So they're like, okay, this is why I should listen to you for the next 45 minutes, hour and a half, because that's a big time commitment. And so you have to give people a reason why they should care. And then after you finally do have their attention, you gotta talk again, kind of talk about them and why they should keep listening to you. Primarily like identifying the problem. So everyone's got problems, and that can either be a positive problem or a negative problem. That's gonna be a pain point. Maybe they don't get great sleep, or they're having, if they have prostate problems, maybe they have trouble urinating, or if there's a bear market going on in the stock market, people are losing money in stocks. It will also be a benefit problem. Like maybe you wish you were making more money, right? That's a very positive problem that you can solve. This solution will help you make more money, help you be able to afford the lifestyle of your dreams. You'll be able to travel all the time. So it can go, problems can come positive or negative the way you're going to approach it. But you really want to identify that problem to the reader and agitate that problem. So they're like, man, I really do have that problem, or I really wish I could solve that problem, whether it's making more money or having better health or losing weight or whatever. And then once you finally agitate that problem, typically I want to provide some value to them. Like one of my mentors always told me that copy should be valuable in itself. So you don't want, people get really upset with things like clickbait, where you say you're going to give them value and they click through and they're just like, there's a letdown, right? There's kind of a disconnect between what you're saying that you're going to deliver and what you actually do deliver. So typically, obviously, you don't want to reveal all the secrets, or if you're selling an info product like I do, I'm not just going to give away all our stock picks or anything like that. But what I do is typically I reveal the mechanism. So the mechanism is kind of the unique way that your product solves the problem. So if I'm selling a newsletter that's a financial newsletter that gives stock recommendations, I'm not going to give those recommendations away, but I will tell them the unique strategy. For example, if it's, let's see here, like value investing is one of them, or investing in small cap stocks, or getting into private equity, or trend following and things like that. So there's plenty of different ways you can make money in the stock market. The unique way that you're going to show them how to do it is kind of your mechanism. And by teaching them about the mechanism, it also makes your product more attractive, right? So then they're like, oh, I understand. This is why I want to buy value stocks, or this is why I want to follow this unique strategy. And it should always be unique. And that's really kind of what makes your value proposition unique, and why they're kind of listening is like, oh, I haven't known about this way to do it before. And so that's kind of the value you're providing. If you're in the health space, for example, and you're talking about losing weight, and you're saying, oh, I'm going to show you how to lose weight, and you won't have to do a bit of exercise. And in terms of dieting, you'll get to eat all the fat you want. You won't have to eat those boring old salads, right? And so your unique mechanism might be like the ketogenic diet, where you eat lots of high protein and things like that, and you reveal that memechanism. So that's your mechanism, but that's not your product, right? So you're not going to get to the product yet. Typically, if you're doing a very long form sales letter like this, like I typically do, you want to, the earlier you kind of reveal like, hey, I want to sell you something, people are just going to tune out. And there's always a huge drop off. So you want to maintain their focus as long as possible, get lots of value. After you reveal that mechanism, you want to show how you came up with that, found that mechanism, and provide some credibility. Why should they be listening to you? Talk about all the people you've helped with your strategy, and maybe show some testimonials or give case studies to show, hey, look at all these people, look at their stories and how they've used the mechanism too to lose that weight or make more money in the stock market. And I have so much credibility. I've taught these people, or I've done this myself. And kind of stories are great too. You want to weave stories in throughout that whole process. And then once you finally revealed all that, and they're at the edge of their seats, like, man, this mechanism is great. I love. You're obviously an expert on it, and you kind of want to do a little more agitation too at this point. Be like, it's great that you know the mechanism, but it's also hard to do it without X, X, and X. So if it's the ketogenic diet, for example, hey, everyone can lose weight with the ketogenic diet, but it's also really hard to cook delicious foods if you're not having grains, if you're not having sugars. So I got this great cookbook that's going to show you all these great recipes that'll help you lose weight using my unique mechanism. And that's the part where you kind of reveal your product. And then you do kind of very well-known things for the close, and like, guarantee, more social proof, stuff like that.
Sure.
And then call to action. You want to sign up, click this link, or enter in your credit card information. I'll send you our product.
That's cool.
Very long-winded there, but that's kind of the long sales process that everyone really needs to go through. And again, that's not necessarily all in one promo. It can be a funnel itself can tackle that in many different stages, whether someone gets an email, and so use the email to grab their attention. Then they go to a landing page, and you may talk more about the problem on the landing page and do the agitation there, and then go on to the sales page. And so you can break it up a little bit and have different approaches for the way you go through that process. But that long format is kind of all the different steps that you need to have typically in your sales letter to ultimately make make the sale.
Sure. How do you research to get into the minds of your prospective buyers for like the ketogenic diet? You obviously don't have massive weight problems. Get into the mind space of people who maybe have been lost money in the stock market before but are willing to try again? How do you research that and know what pain points to agitate or even where to begin?
Sure. That's a great question. That's really kind of square one for a lot of writing. You need to do your research, and mentors have told this to me, and I've experienced this myself. Typically, if I'm struggling with writer's block, a lot of times it's because I haven't done enough research. Okay. So going out and hearing firsthand accounts from people who are experiencing the problem. So I highly recommend going on to online forums and reading the comments section of different articles and hearing verbatim how people are describing their problems. So forums are a huge, huge resource for copywriters. You can go on Facebook and go into different Facebook groups that address certain problems, whether it's marketing or weight loss or sales or whatever. And people will be asking questions in the Facebook group or telling their stories of how they're struggling and they need help. So all those resources are critical in terms of finding out, what does this problem look like? And when you need that fodder to tell those stories, that's typically where, and if I don't have them from clients or testimonials, I can go from customer experience. I definitely dive right into online forums, Facebook groups, stuff like that is a great resource for finding. Just the language that people use to describe their problem is incredibly powerful, and people aren't really sold by studies. It's good to have some research in your sales, in your persuasion, but it should never be the main point. You never want to necessarily lead with a study and all this research. It's much more powerful to use an anecdote, a story. And then once you tell that story, then you can kind of pepper in the research on top of that. So you tell a story of someone losing weight, and then you might be like, hey, well, this person, Joe, he's not alone. In fact, a study in Switzerland found that people who took Joe's approach tended to lose weight. But again, it's just a 1 or 2 line proof point of the story. Not, you don't want to lead with lots of different studies and overwhelm them with numbers. I mean, numbers are important and good, but at the end of the day, people don't make decisions based on logic. You grab their attention with emotion, you justify that attention with some logic, but then you have to end with emotion again to really seal the deal and get them to act.
That's cool. When you said that was something that your mentors had worked with you on earlier, what kind of training did you go through at Agora? Maybe first off, how do you get a job there? You have to move to Baltimore to work in their offices. Is that right? At least as a new copywriter? Yeah,
absolutely. So that's one of the big disincentives why a lot of people don't end up wanting to work there, is because if you are a brand new copywriter, you got to move to Baltimore. Luckily for me, I knew I wanted to get into copywriting, and I had some mentors who worked at Agora, and I knew that the copy team of where I wanted to work was just one of the best in the business. And so I just graduated I was about to graduate college, and frankly, they have various high standards of who they hire, and they weren't hiring at the time. And I didn't really have a lot of experience. I had done some just projects for friends of mine for free, just so I could build up my portfolio, get practice, but they weren't hiring copywriters. So what I did was I just reached out and I was like, hey, are there any opportunities here? And they're like, well, there's customer service. And so I got a customer service job. I spent 6 months in customer service, and the entire time I was just pestering my boss. Hey man, let me up to the 4th floor, which is the attic at the building I was in, where other copywriters sat in their kind of cone of silence. And copywriters can be very introverted, but I was just I just nagged my boss, and I really went in to the job, telling him, I'm coming in. This is a stepping stone, and a lot of companies at Agora like to hire internally, but they like to groom people, because copywriting tends to be, if you really want to get good at it, it tends to be like an old school trade, like being a blacksmith or something. You start off as an apprentice, and you really work with someone who's a master, and they teach you their craft. A lot of people get the idea that copywriting or just writing in general is something that you're just born with, and you have a innate ability to write well, but it's something that you just have to get a lot of feedback on it and read a lot of copy and go through the process. So in terms of the actual training process, after I was 6 months into customer service, they were like, hey, we are going to open up the doors, and we're going to hire a big class of junior copywriters.
Nice.
And so the Stansberry copy team, which is where I worked, they were about to bring on, I think it was about 7 junior copywriters at the time. And copy group was maybe only 14 people total, 15 people total, including those 7. So they basically doubled the size of their copy team with those juniors. But they were doing, they didn't have a strict formulaic process for hiring, but when they brought us in, it was kind of cool being part of a class. Like it was like a class of copywriters, and they tend to do that now. Like they'll hire a new wave of class and they'll train them all together. And so we'd at first they would just tell us to read lots of copy. They'd let us look into their swipe file, and we'd read all the big hits that they've had at Agora. And there was a copy review twice a week on Monday and Thursday. And at that point, when you're first starting, you're not really writing a lot of copy. You're just trying to absorb as much as you can. And so it was like, here's some books you should read. We'd have every week, maybe like a senior would sit down with the class of juniors, and he'd go through one of his promos or her promos and go break it down piece by piece and show what worked well in it and why it was so successful, create a kind of template or outline it, and break it down into little chunks and kind of explain the reason why each part was done the way it was. And then on top of that as well, one of the things we had to do as the class of juniors was we had to come up with 5 ideas every single day and submit them to the copy group. And they could be any ideas related to the business. They didn't always have to be copy ideas, but they could just be any ideas related to the business. And then the seniors would come through and say, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea. Most of the ideas were very bad, but that was just part of the exercise, right? And you're trying to work that idea muscle and get in the habit of identifying when you have a good idea and writing it down, and developing kind of your golden gut, as we would call it, is basically just kind of your subconscious, your intuition for identifying, okay, this is a good idea. This is a bad idea. And that just really comes with practice. And again, it's not something you're born with. It just takes experience to review lots of ideas or look through lots of copy to say, oh, this is what works. This sounds like good copy I've seen before.
Mm-hmm. You're reading books. Do you have any book recommendations or anything on your shelf that's your go-to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of books that a lot of other copywriters recommend that probably I haven't read a lot of, but my favorites, I think if you're just starting off, one of my favorite books would be Elements of Style, Strunk White. It's not even a copy book. It's just a very fundamental book on writing clear, concise language. And when you're starting off as a newbie, you don't want to go for the really advanced stuff. It's a little overwhelming. And so I would really just focus on your writing fundamentals with, Elements of Style. Another one that's just about like coming up with ideas is called A Technique for Producing Ideas. And I think the author's last name is Young. I forget, these like 2 initials in Young, but it's called The Technique for Producing Ideas. And both those books are literally like 50, 60 pages long. They're tiny little manuals. Shrunk White's a little bit longer. But those are 2 I have on my shelf that were critical when I was starting out. In terms of kind of the really, the good copywriter or the legends and more famous copywriting specific books. Ogilvy on Advertising is a classic. I learned a lot from that. That was just a very cool book. I love reading through it. It's got a lot of examples in the book that you can look to. I tended to read a lot of just old school guys, and I recommend that because if you're reading a lot of newer copy books, those tend to be books that a lot of other people today are reading. If you want to come up with unique ideas, it's really easy if you can go, the farther back in history you go, the less you see that currently, right? And if you want to just revitalize, I mean, most ideas are just kind of remixes on angles and ideas that have already been done before. So John Caples, he's written a couple of books that are great. Claude Hopkins, both those guys. Scientific Advertising is pretty mandatory reading.
Absolutely.
What else here? Let me see. I loved Eugene Schwartz, Breakthrough Advertising. That one's really hard to get, and that one tends to be more advanced. So I wouldn't start off with Breakthrough Advertising. You can't find it on Amazon. It's published by Bottom Line Books, and if you go on Amazon, you'll buy a used copy for like $240. It's really expensive.
Actually, I think you could find it for like $125 or $135.
Okay.
You're listening to another exclusive interview from the Persuasion Play podcast with Jeffrey Thomas.
BreakthroughAdvertising.com, I think, has it. It's maybe Bob Bly or somebody's republishing it right now.
Yeah. I think Brian Kurtz might still have the right. Might have the rights. I'm not sure.
I have an eye on it, but I haven't picked it up. It's pricey.
Yeah. It's pricey, but it's they're not. Eugene Schwartz, the late great Eugene Schwartz. He's not writing any more books anytime soon. I have a book, and I was kind of stupid because I didn't realize how valuable it was at the time. So I have like all these highlighter marks and notes in the margins. So I'm like, oh man, I definitely can't resell this on Amazon. But no, it's super valuable. One more, I guess, I think if you can't get breakthrough advertising, I would definitely recommend Great Leads by Michael Masterson, that's actually his pen name. It's Mark Ford and John Ford, who co-wrote it together. And they're both excellent world-class copywriters. And they actually take a lot of the ideas from breakthrough advertising in terms of the prospect awareness and how you should write different leads depending on the level of awareness of a prospect. So if someone has bought from you before, they know about the problem, and it's really just kind of very offer-driven copy. You don't need to do the whole song and dance to warm them up per se. That approach would be very different than someone going out to a ice cold lead online who's never even thought about buying your product before, who doesn't know who you are, who doesn't know about the problem. That one requires more a different kind of tact, maybe grab their attention with a story or a big hook with a benefit attached to it. So, I like Great Leads because it actually, again, if you don't have a swipe file, it's got specific examples of copy and leads in there to show you, this is what this type of lead looks like. And so Great Leads is a fantastic book, one of my favorites.
That's good. I've not heard of that. Thank you. You've been a freelance copywriter now since Agora.
Started in 2013, right? So let's see here. So I've been freelancing for about, I left in 2016. So going on 3 years.
Almost 3 years.
Freelance.
Okay,
Yeah.
so was your 3 years at Agora enough? I mean, obviously you're running your copy dojo and you're a freelance right now.
Yeah. I mean, when I started on the copy team at Stansberry, no doubt I'm still learning and still improving. The thing about copywriting, it's not something that you ever truly master. You might read Malcolm Gladwell and think, oh, I just need 10,000 hours, but you're always improving. You're always getting, but writing is such a deep skill. And especially when you're combining it with things like sales and psychology, you're just adding more wrinkles onto the craft that you're trying to do. And so I know guys who've been in it for a very long time and they're still improving. And I feel like every new promotion I write is my best promotion yet because I'm constantly adding new wrinkles to my game. So I have learned more by staying at there longer? Absolutely. But I also learned a ton by leaving, especially when it comes to selling my skills and my services. And Agora has their own way of doing things as well. They have a model for creating promotions and stuff as well. But since I left, I also have added a lot of skills to my repertoire that I've learned from outside copywriters who never worked at Agora. So it's always good to look at other industries, look at other businesses, and see how they're doing it. And you can learn and add the things they're doing well to your skill set. So, for example, you probably know Ben Settle. He's a world-class email writer. He's got a daily email list. I didn't learn about Ben Settle until after I left Agora, and he really changed my ideas and the way I write emails and daily emails and things like that. And so I probably wouldn't have started my email list and really has added a whole skill set in terms of daily email writing to my skill set that I would have never have gotten if I had stayed. But needless to say, it's a journey. It's not a destination. You're never going to be the master where you know it all, and especially today with mediums changing all the time in terms of Facebook advertising, Google advertising. The medium of your copy is always going to evolve, and the way you need to approach the sales process is going to change. And so you're always learning new ways to apply your principles to these new mediums and kind of also the zeitgeist of the market. So new trends happen, whether it's like the ketogenic diet or different, depending on where the stock market's at right now, people have different feelings about certain strategies, whether it's investing in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So all those things evolve and change, and you have to keep tabs on those and add those to your game and research and know your market, because the market's always changing. The psychology of the market might not, but the way we do our job is constantly evolving.
Are you mostly in the financial industry, financial market right now?
Yeah, absolutely. All my clients really are financial, to sell financial newsletters. That's kind of my bread and butter. I do a lot of coaching for copywriters in the health space and other things like that. My personal business for coaching copywriting and selling copywriter education, that would be considered like make money online, like the business opportunity space. So I technically write copy for that niche in my own business. But for client work, I exclusively do financial newsletters. It's a profitable business to be in. I'm fascinated by investing in stock market and all different types of asset classes and central banking. And I used to get into the weeds all the time and just I love reading the really wonky investment books and things like that as well. So, if you're a copywriter, you got to be really curious. And that's definitely one of the things that makes the job so fulfilling, is that you're constantly learning, and you have to know not just about how to be a great copywriter in your craft, but you have to know all about the product and how it works, and really how it works just as well as the people in the business you're working with.
Sure. How do you find your clients? How do they find you?
Yeah, so I know a lot of copywriters, especially when they're newbies, are on like Fiverr and Upwork or doing cold outreach. And I totally get that. I think if you're trying to start immediately as a freelancer, that's something you just have to go through. But I was very fortunate that since I started at Agora and I got a few years there under my belt, that once I did leave, it was actually quite easy for me to get clients, because people would just reach out to me and ask, hey, are you writing copy? Are you available? Because in our business, and definitely in financial copywriting, and just copywriting in general, if you're an info publisher, your business is so dependent on copy. And to a large degree, there's a lot of copywriters out there. Like I mentioned, if you go on Fiverr and Upwork and kind of different freelancing sites like that, there's a million people who will say, hey, I'm a copywriter, I'll write copy. But because there's so many people out there, the variance in skill is so great. There's people who have just no experience who just say, hey, I can write, so I'll write copy. But then there's people who've done it successfully, who've written many different packages, who've sold millions and such. So because I have experience at Agora, when I ended up leaving, that gave me instant credibility. And when I got started at Stansberry on their copy team, Mike Palmer, who's the copy chief there, is one of the greatest living copywriters. He just told our class, he's like, hey, you stay here 2 or 3 years, you'll never have to worry about money again. And that was I wasn't sure if it was right, but when I did leave, I could definitely validate that people would just reach out to me, get referrals all the time. In fact, when I did leave, I ended up getting just 3 referrals from Jenny Thompson. Jenny, she used to be the CEO of New Market Health, which is a company at Agora, and she was consulting for other businesses. And honestly, I had never worked with Jenny before, but she just knew of my experience working at Stansberry and the type of, the rigorous training that they go through. And because of that, she was like, hey, Matt, are you taking client work? Because I got all these people who, need copywriters. So people, if you're a business that is in direct response and your business is highly dependent on getting good copy, then they are always looking for good copywriters.
I bet. When you were first starting out, do you recall any massive failures or embarrassing moments, or something that you thought was going to be a great promo and it was mailed but just didn't do any good?
Oh, absolutely. way too many that I'd care to admit. And, I think that's really the story of most copywriters, especially when you're starting off. The chances that you're going to beat the control, that you're going to have a blockbuster success, it's slim to none. Mm-hmm. And so the first couple of years, it's really just you taking your licks and understanding what works and what doesn't, and trying to develop that golden gut. So, I wrote a promo, probably the most painful one because I was so excited about it. It was a prepper promo too, so for the survival niche, and it was about solar flares, and I had all this great research by like Congress people talking about how much of a danger our electric grid was to solar flares, and that if we had a major solar flare that was as bad as one that was called the Carrington event, which is like in the late 1800s, so not too long ago. But if that event happened today, basically almost the entire United States was lose power for not just a few days or a few weeks, but 1 to 2 months. And like the transformers that we would need to do the replacements on the electric grid, they're only manufactured in China. There's only a handful of them on reserve. Like we have no way to actually repair it if it does go down from a severe solar flare. So it was this huge promo about that. And honestly, it was probably just way too much fear mongering. And I think it was hard for people to believe. It's a lot easier to sell a cure rather than prevention. And so I think a lot of people were just like, I'm not that worried about that. It's never going to happen. Even though like NASA estimates that the likelihood of that type of event happening is about 12% every 10 years. So it's actually not that slim, especially when you consider the risk. But yeah, the copy, like everyone at the time, it went around copy review a bunch. Everyone around at the table was like, man, this is great. It's gonna do killer. Got really high grades, and then went out and shit the bed. Yeah. So that was very frustrating, especially just being in those marketing meetings. I just wanted to give it as much chance as it could, and the head of marketing was just like, no, we got to kill it. I'm like, God, that's always, you have to develop thick skin as a copywriter and have a short memory. Remember your failures, but you can't let them that drag you down, right? Yeah. So you just you got to move on to the next one, and it's just a lot of attempts, a lot of swings at the plate. If things don't go away, just okay. Which is really hard when you spend so much time on it. So I mean, most promos, the quickest, especially when you're starting out, I mean, fastest you're going to write a promo is like 2 months. And so that's a lot of time. You invest a lot of time and energy and thought into an idea. And when it doesn't work, it can be very demoralizing. And that's a lot of your early career, especially if you're working with big publishers who have lots of good copywriters, because, since they have huge copy teams with a lot of seniors and a lot of veterans on them, if your promo isn't working, man, going to get out of there. Up next, who's up next at the plate? So it's very competitive, but you just have to trust in the process that you are getting better, even if you strike out 5 times in a row. It's just, you got to keep at it.
Yeah. So right now, you said that you spent a couple of months at that time doing promos. Right now, when somebody hires you, you do a full funnel, you do ads, you do the promos. How long is a process like that, and what all do you provide to the client in the situation?
Yeah, so like I said, we call it typically a package. So it's the top of the funnel all the way to the bottom. So typically it'll include a handful of emails that are either going to go out to the internal list or out to cold traffic or affiliate lists as well. So I'll have lists, and possibly some Facebook ads or display ads that are going to go on the Google Ad Network or Gemini. There's a million different ad networks, and they all have different requirements for amount of text you have in your ad. So that'll vary depending on the client you're working with. You might need to write some landing page copy or advertorials. So for example, Facebook doesn't like you creating an ad and then sending people to an hour-long promo. They're like, that's not cool. So they typically want you to have a landing page in between there. And so you'll write an advertorial, which is maybe a listicle, the 5 veggies you should eat to burn belly fat, something like that, sure. Right? And so that'll be your kind of article that provides value. And then at the end, it's if you want to learn more, click here, and that'll take them to the long form sales letter. And then obviously for the promo, right, you're either doing a VSL, which is basically just a PowerPoint presentation with someone talking over it. Okay. That's kind of the most basic video. Sometimes if you're good and if the client's got a budget, you'll have more production value behind that. Either a real video with people talking on camera, or with some B-roll and footage and all that. So, or you'll just do a plain Jane sales letter, just all the text on the page, things like that. And then after that, you got your order form, and you got your upsells to other products, or upselling people to, if you're selling a 1-year newsletter, your upsell might be, hey, why don't you get the lifetime subscription? And then also cross sells, hey, in addition to this one, we also have this other product you want to try. And these are one click. So it's they just bought, so you don't have to enter your credit card information again. Once people buy, they're as hot as they're ever going to be. So you definitely want to give them another offer right away. And they can just say, yes, I want to get this too, and add this to my cart. And you'll immediately just charge them as part of that process. But that whole process right there is the funnel, the package. And so in terms of time, it really varies. So it can vary dramatically, because a lot of times you don't know from the get-go a couple things. So you don't know how you're necessarily going to get into the promo. So the headline and lead, right? The headline and lead are basically the most important part, because if you don't grab someone's attention right away and have a good enough hook, then all the rest of the promo is for naught. They're not going to get to it, so it doesn't really matter. But finding that good headline and lead can be really challenging sometimes. And typically I like to, if I don't know what my headline and lead is going to be, I'll just start writing the rest of the promo. I kind of have like a placeholder for the headline lead. And as I'm writing the promo, as I'm getting it out and fleshing it out, I'll come up with ideas, and the headline lead will typically find itself as the writing process is taking shape. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, I know Agora, when I was working there, that was definitely one of the frustrating things being a junior, because they didn't want you to just dive right into a promo if you didn't have a good headline lead idea. Because why waste your time on that full thing if you can't get a good idea for the headline lead? So typically, the step-by-step process there would be, okay, you come up with your big idea, and this is like 1 or 2 sentences about what the theme of your promotion about. It's not your headline, but it's your theme. So losing weight with the ketogenic diet. That would be a theme. Or the End of America, for example, which is Mike Palmer's promo that did so well. That's saying America is going to go down to the pits basically because of the devaluation of the currency through the central bank. So it's basically your thesis statement. You don't explicitly say it in the copy, but it's the theme of the promo itself. And you have to come up with a big enough idea first. Once you get your big idea approved, then you figure out, okay, how am I going to get into that idea, which is your headline and lead. And so it was a linear process there. You come up with a big idea, you develop your headline and lead. Then once your headline and lead are approved, then you can move on to the body copy. But like I was just saying, a lot of times after I have the big idea, I don't necessarily know the best way to get into it. So I have to just work on the body copy. And then while working on the body copy, I figure out the headline lead. And so that can add a lot of time to it. I've had plenty of times where I got my headline and lead approved, but then while writing the body copy, I was like, wow, I just came up with an even better idea for the headline lead. So let's scrap all of that, completely rewrite it. And that happened just so many times when I was starting out. But once you do develop a skill and you get a little more leeway with your copy chief or whatever, then they're like, okay, we don't need you to get a headline and lead approved. I trust that you'll figure it out as you're writing the body copy because you've proved yourself. So it can vary dramatically. If I'm writing like a single stock story that's like, oh, there's an event going on, or there's a discovery of gold in Nevada. Okay, they made this huge discovery. It's gonna be huge, and people are gonna make a ton of money from it. It's very simple. My execution, I understand it very well. I can just fly through it pretty quickly. If the format is different, it can add a lot more time to it. So right now, I've also been working on a promotion where I flew out to Baltimore. We invited lots of customers to come out. Actually got them on camera and I interviewed them. And I just interviewed them and asked them questions about their lifestyle and things like that, and how the product has affected their lives and how they're living their dream in retirement. And at that point, just doing those interviews, I knew that I wanted to build a promotion based on all these testimonials. I didn't know how I would execute it or how I'd get into it, but I knew the ideas would kind of flesh themselves out from those testimonials. But I couldn't do it I couldn't start writing until I had the testimonials first. So that's taken a long time because we had to get people to come out to Baltimore. We had to get them on camera. We had to schedule all that stuff, get them filmed, get the transcripts back. And then once I finally had the transcripts, then I could start writing. And so I've been writing that for 3 months. And even that has been a challenge too, because I've been writing it, most of the body copy in an interview format where you have kind of a narrator, someone interviewing the main editor, right? So it's kind of, you have this back and forth. And that can be a challenge too, because you want it to seem and feel like a documentary where it's objective and you're not just, it's not obvious that like the interview is really just secretly a pitch man, and it can be very easy to make it sound disingenuous. Like, oh, that's a great question, Matt. It just sounds fake. You want it to sound like a real interview. Like, I don't know what the answer is going to be. And it should seem, you guys have to inject skepticism in questions. And it should seem like the interviewer is actually kind of interrogating the guy. So that way the audience doesn't feel like, oh, he's just like, you're just setting him up to just pitch his service, So that you have to build that credibility and really make it feel like a documentary and give lots of value and have that kind of feeling to it, which is a challenge because most of my promos, most Agora promos aren't like that. They're just from one narrator just talking to the audience. And so when you do another format like that, it's in the dialogue, it adds more wrinkles onto the writing. So that's taking a little bit longer.
Was that your idea to do the video sales letter with all those interviews and stuff? Is that something you produce or you put together, or was that kind of more on the clients that they wanted to fly a bunch of people out to Baltimore?
No, that was actually my idea. So I'm lucky to the point where I do have, enough experience where I could talk to the client and say, hey, I have this idea. This is what I want to do. And since I've worked with them a very long time, they give me the leeway to do those kind of things and have that kind of budget. And I've seen, and they've done those kind of things before, but typically if you're a junior and you have no experience, they're not going to invest those type of resources into a promotion. One of my mentors early on when I was working at Agora, he would do videos just like that, where it would be an interview and a kind of an investigation kind of thing. So having it like a 60 minutes episode, it makes it much more engaging and credible and entertaining, but it's a challenge to do that as well. So I've been, like I said, you're always learning as a copywriter and adding new parts to your craft. And kind of this is the next step. Like you definitely don't want to start with interview formats necessarily, because it is a lot more challenging than just writing from one perspective, just talking to the audience.
Sure, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine it's tough to start just straight off with the video course. I think a lot of people have signed up for your email list, being the daily copywriter, just to kind of see what kind of stuff you can put out on the daily. And you're always sharing value in each of those emails, which is, I've been on the list for a while. Ben Settle got you into that, and is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was.
For more information about persuasion, motivation, and mindset, and how you can influence your brain and the brains around you, visit my website at https://goldmine.marketing.
Really cool, because when I first left and I got a recommendation, or I mentioned I got those referrals, and one of the clients was like, "Hey, Matt, can you do some daily emails for us in the vein of Ben Settle?" I'm like, well, I've heard of Ben Settle before, and I wasn't an email player subscriber at the time, but I was like, I guess I got to get on his list and just read all his emails and sign up for email player. So I did that, and I really appreciated that because it gave me permission. I hadn't seen a lot of other copywriters out there with their own businesses who were teaching copywriting in the way Ben does through the daily emails and stuff. And so it gave me permission to do it for myself. I'm like, Matt, you got a decent amount of experience writing copy. You have good clients and client work that you can talk about in your emails. And so that really inspired and motivated me to create my own email list, to talk about copywriting every day and the things that I'm doing with clients and sharing that knowledge in the daily emails. So getting inspired from Ben, it was really the first part. He also turned me on to Matt Fury, which is who Ben learned from. And I also have gone through all Matt's stuff as well. But just seeing how those guys executed and how they teach people copywriting, gave me internal permission to take everything I've learned at Agora and the A-listers I've learned from and share that with others through my free list. And then once I do get on the free list though, I kind of part of the reason I also wanted to teach people about copywriting, I kind of multiple motivations for teaching them. Obviously, it's great to help others and stuff. And I sell a course called Copywriter Conditioning, but it's not just really about selling the course. I've also, like I mentioned earlier, my clients are looking for good copywriters all the time. And so kind of the way I'm able to position my business and add value, not just to the people on my list, as well as my clients, is by using my list to find people who are really interested in copywriting, train them up through the course. And then I also have a coaching group that I do where I review their copy. As we mentioned earlier, feedback is so critical when you're trying to learn copywriting. And if you're not getting that on a regular basis, then you're just going to kind of flounder along and not really make progress. And so by having this external way where people can learn about copywriting, get training, come on and get feedback in my copy dojo, it allows me to kind of vet people, train them up. And then when I have clients who have all this work who are like, well, where are we going to find great copywriters? I have this group of students who fit the bill, and I can vouch for them, and I can say, who's really working hard and who's good, and refer them to clients, as well as working with me on my own projects. So yeah, I sell the course, which is cool, but the kind of secret reason why I do it is because I'm looking for copywriters all the time who are good and who are hungry and want to learn the craft and who are willing to take feedback. And if you are, it's a very profitable way to write for a living. So it's kind of, I have kind of two motivations for it. Yeah, I don't, my list isn't very big. I don't sell a ton of courses, but the real reason it's just it's to find people who are really good and want to learn copywriting so I can work with them on my client stuff and refer clients to them. Because I think that's the bigger opportunity.
Yeah, sure. Before your copyright conditioning class, you had an opening or a few openings in the dojo. And I had emailed you saying, I'm interested in this, but I have no experience with copywriting. Is this for me? And you wrote back and honestly said, no, without experience, you can come join later, but this is for people who are looking to build up what they already have. And I was thankful that was your answer,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who will just, sell stuff to anyone willing to open up their wallets. But I want my students to see results. And, if you're not actively working with clients, then you won't get a lot of benefit from getting feedback, right? The feedback and the coaching is really valuable if you're out there and you have a project and you don't know how to get into the project, or you're working on a project and you need to figure out how to iterate and get better. But yeah, the thing is with the dojo, it's a very big cost to me since I am spending that kind of giving that personalized feedback. It doesn't scale very well. It's not the kind of thing that I can have 1 million people in the group. So if I'm going to have people in the group, I want to make sure that they at least got a client and they are doing client work.
Yep.
So I've seen a lot of people who haven't done any client work, or some people have come into the dojo just check it out, even through my warnings, and quickly cancel, or they try to participate in the copy challenges, which is I have monthly challenges that sometimes offer cash prizes, and so they won't practice or do any of the preliminary stuff, but they just want to come in for a quick buck. And I'm like, those aren't that's not who I'm looking for. I don't want you to just, because then it's just a waste of my time, because they're not writing good copy. They clearly haven't gone through the material. They're not spending a lot of time doing it. And so it's, it's lose-lose in that situation for all of us. So it's better just to keep it, a smaller group who really want to get better.
Absolutely. Well, I hope to see you there another time.
Yeah. I'd love to have you, man.
Yeah. So you recently got married, huh?
Yeah. October. Got married in October, which luckily it's kind of nice having the freelance thing set up. I wasn't beholden to lots of clients and things like that, where I'm worried about them harassing me over my honeymoon. On my honeymoon, I was still writing my daily emails, which my wife, she's understanding. But that's something that I really enjoy doing. And as you saw through my video, I can bang him out pretty quick. So typically she loves to sleep in. So I would just get up like 7, 8 in the morning, go watch the sunrise, bang out my email. And there's always little times during the day. I think a lot of people get intimidated by the idea of writing daily emails. But if you're thoughtful about it and you're conscious, and especially once you get some practice under your belt, then it becomes a lot easier, and you're just it becomes addictive and a habit and something you have to do. And day doesn't feel complete unless I've sent out my email, and I'd feel this tremendous amount of guilt if I didn't write my daily email.
Do you pound those out ahead of time or the day before, or do you line up 5 in a row ever? Honeymoon style?
When I first started, I did, because I think I was worried that if I didn't have a lot planned out, then I'd end up falling off and slacking. But once I got to the point where it was something that I have to do, then that wasn't a concern anymore. And typically when I'm scheduling out my day, I try to get the most important things done first, not necessarily the most urgent. Like, the daily emails are important, don't get me wrong, but they're not gonna, make or break my business. Even though I would feel a tremendous amount of guilt, they're more the urgent thing. So I know I'm gonna get that done no matter what. But getting done like my client work or work with my students and stuff like that, that's really important for moving the needle for me. And so I try to get that work done first. And since I know I'm going to do the email no matter what, it's important for me to do the other stuff first that I might procrastinate on if I didn't do it first. So now that I know that I'm not gonna miss a day on email, I just do it the day of. Well, I probably should do it the day before, just so I send it out at the same time every day. But I'm a little lazy about it, and it's just like, if I can, I tend to procrastinate too much, and so that's why I try to get my client work done first, and so I'm not putting that off. So
what's your work day?
It definitely changes. So when I first started, it was important to have a routine just to get into a rhythm. But if you're too beholden to a routine, if you're too dependent on a routine, it can make you a little fragile. So when things come up in the day, or your plans change, or you do go on vacation, how do you make sure you still get things done when you're not able to do the routine? So I view it, I don't really have a routine as much as I have habits. So like doing my daily email is a habit. Maybe, doing push-ups every day is a habit, things like that. Following my diet is a habit. And so I don't try to break it down necessarily a routine. And I also go to writers meetups a lot. So I have 2 writers meetups during the week. I host one on Monday mornings from 9 to 12:30. And then I go to another one on Wednesday. That's the same time. Those are at the coffee shop down the street from me. But so that's pretty much the only set thing in my routine. But since things come up like meetings with clients, traveling, all kinds of things like that, if I got married to a routine, I wouldn't be able to keep it when those things come up. And so I really just kind of prioritize the things I need to get done. And when I have time, just having the discipline to take advantage of the time when you get it.
That's good. Are those writers meetups all copywriters, or is that everybody?
Not at all, man. So it's mostly not copywriters.
Yeah, sure.
There's very few copywriters at the group. It's mostly fiction writers, people writing memoirs and things like that. A lot of PhD students working on their dissertation. So those are the most common forms of writers I see there. And I would say it's mostly non-professional writers. So if you do write for a living there, that's people are like, oh wow, you actually you get paid to write? That's crazy. So
you obviously find value there though, huh? I mean, you wouldn't attend to 2 a week if there wasn't something.
Absolutely. So it's not the kind of thing where it's for feedback. We don't like go around in a circle and share what we wrote and get critiques or anything. It's really just for accountability. And sometimes, when I'm working from home and I have my dog or, my 2 big full screen monitors, it's a lot easier to get distracted. And so it's helpful to go to the coffee shop, be surrounded by people who are also focused. Especially, I think that's one of the things that is really valuable to people who do work a 9 to 5, having that office setting where other people around you are working, gets you in the mindset to work and get things done. And if you're a freelancer and you don't have that, it can be challenging, to work from home and not get distracted and not do the things that you shouldn't be doing. And so I like the writers meetups just because I can go down, so we start writing right at 9:15. We set a timer.
33 minute, 33 second.
not quite Pomodoro, but we do an hour and a half of writing, and then take a 15-minute break, then write for another hour and a half. So it's good blocks. I think I used to do Pomodoro technique a lot more, but I also realized that as you get more practice with writing, you can kind of go for longer stretches without the break. So I think 33 minutes sometimes is a little too little because I'll get into flow. And when I'm on that flow, I don't want to stop and take a break. I need to just keep going. And so I think an hour and a half is pretty good. And having 2 blocks of 3 hours, you do 3 hours of solid writing, and then you can get a lot done. I think, I know some professional writers who like Clayton Makepeace, he's able to write 7-8 hours a day. That's really tough, but I think you can do really well as a professional if you can just do 3 or 4.
Sure. What would you recommend finding clients if they're not finding you? Suggestions on that for new budding copywriters? Yeah.
So like I mentioned earlier, I think, there is value to freelancing sites and stuff like that. When I first started, as I mentioned, before I got into Agora, I reached out to just people I knew who had businesses. So you can go into I recommend going into like Facebook groups, not of Facebook groups of copywriters, but of business owners who hire copywriters. Places like that. Again, so the mistake I see a lot of people make when they go into copywriter Facebook groups. Everyone in the copywriter Facebook group is looking for clients. That's not where you'll find them. I would reach out to people who need to hire copywriters, whether that's info publishers and health supplement business owners, stuff like that. And I think personally, I would focus, if you're brand new, I think it's a lot more valuable to get a really good client and working your butt off to get that really good client versus thinking, how can I get money as fast as possible? Because there's lots, sure, you can go on Fiverr and Upwork and get, a gig for $50 or $100 or whatever. But the person who's hiring a copywriter on Fiverr or Upwork probably doesn't have lots of copy projects to give out, or they probably don't value copywriters as much as other businesses who can pay top dollar. So by getting your foot in the door with a client, by making a good impression, I have an interview with Tej Dosa, who's a copywriter on Twitter, who's done a lot of cold outreach, and he kind of did the Gary Halbert thing where he basically send them cash in the mail with kind of a sales pitch about how you can help their business. But his method was more just really investing in research and finding the right client. I think is more important than finding a client, because if you find the right client and if you do a good job, then it sets you up for, like I mentioned, the referrals and more copy work down the road, and you'll level up within their business. Also, the really valuable part about being an in-house copywriter was getting feedback from other copywriters and other marketers. So if you're working with a client who doesn't have a lot of copywriting experience, chances are they're not going to be able to give you the feedback that you need to improve. Whether that's the data, they probably won't want to share the data with you on how your sales are doing or let you check on that. And they might not have the copy expertise to actually give you valid criticisms and help you improve your copy. So, finding someone, if you're trying to be a long-form copywriter, or email copywriter who has a list and he emails lots all the time. So someone who's already doing it and does it well, and trying to make an impression with them, even if it's for a small fee or just trying to get your foot in the door, that is going to set you up much more long-term. It's a long game. And if anything, I demonstrated that myself, just working my butt off, starting in customer service, trying to get the foot in the door of what I thought was, the best copywriting department on the planet, so I could learn from the best. And by putting that time early on, that really set me up for the rest of my career. So I see people go about it both ways. I think if you're trying just to do it for the quick buck, then you'll just be spinning your wheels for too long, and you won't necessarily make the progress you need to get to the level where you're able to charge big fees and get royalties and things like that from your projects.
Sure. I can understand that. You're still a young man, so just good work for you to get into business early, huh?
Yeah. Getting it right out of college was definitely a huge advantage, and a lot of people. But honestly, I see copywriters kind of break in at lots of stages in their career, whether it's people who are fresh out of college, as well as guys who started off in one career and then learned about copywriting later on, and then became copywriters, and they become smashing successes too. So I don't think there's any a prime point when it's not like you're an athlete where you're in your physical prime to be a copywriter. It's not like that at all. I think anyone can become a great copywriter. You do have to be able to take criticism and feedback, and I think being older, that can be an impediment if you have issues with ego and just learning from other people who are gonna just shit all over your copy. It can be tough. It's definitely an ego check, and if that's an issue for you, then that's going to be a problem to actually impede your growth and progress as a copywriter.
Absolutely. Probably in any field, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, is there anything you wish I had asked you today, or anything else you want to share with us?
No, man, that was a great interview. I thought we covered a lot. I hope the listeners got a lot of value out of it. I just wanted to say thank you again for inviting me onto the podcast. Yeah, if any of your listeners again want to get some more training or check out my daily emails, I have all my emails. They're getting almost all posted now, but they're on my website at mattrizvi.com. And of course, you'll get the fresh stuff if you sign up for the email list.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's an enjoyable email to read every day.
Appreciate that, Jeffrey.
All right, Matt. Well, thank you so much. Good luck with everything. Enjoy your San Francisco weather. I think my temperature is about -11 here in St. Paul. So,
yikes, man. Bundle up. Don't get frostbite.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
All right. Take care, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. The Persuasion Play Podcast with Matt Rizvi. You can find Matt at mattrizvi.com, where you can sign up for his daily emails. I highly suggest you do. You can find me, Jeffrey, at persuasionreadinglist.com. And if you liked what you heard today, please come back for the Persuasion Play Podcast again. And at persuasionreadinglist.com, you can sign up for my own daily emails, where I write about, Periscope about, blog about, tweet about, and podcast about persuasion, motivation, and influence, and how you can motivate your brain and the brains around you towards better outcomes. Have a great day.